Cost of living in Liberia. Hello Displorers, welcome to another informative video presented to you by Displore, and thanks for watching. The housing, transportation, education and health cost of any country is a great indication of the cost of living of any country. The cost of living in Liberia is the reflection of the quality of life shown in how much is spent on housing, transport, education and health. That is why in this video, we shall examine the cost of housing, transportation, education and healthcare in Liberia to determine the cost of living in this country. But first, we need to understand what cost of living is really all about. The cost of living is the amount of money needed to cover basic expenses such as housing, food, taxes and healthcare in a certain place and time period. The cost of living is often used to compare how expensive it is to live in one city versus another. The cost of living is tied to wages because if expenses are higher in a city such as New York for example, salary levels must also be higher so that people can afford to live in that particular city. The cost of living can be a significant factor in personal wealth accumulation because a salary can provide a higher standard of living in a country where daily expenses such as rent, entertainment and food are less. In contrast, a high salary can seem insufficient in an expensive country. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. The cost of living in Liberia is a great reflection of the incomes of those living in the country. It is imperative to get an understanding of salaries and wages in Liberia to evaluate its cost of living because a high salary will imply lower cost of living and a lower wage range, which will imply prices will become unbearable for the individual or family, hence higher cost of living. Wages in Liberia. On a general basis, salaries in Liberia vary with experience, degrees as well as where you work. More to these disparities, experts or nationals working with multinational companies tend to earn more than the average workers in Liberia. A person working in Liberia typically earns around $360.8 per month, and salaries range from a lower average of $91.46 to $1,609, which represents the highest average, but we should note that these are averages and the actual maximum salaries are then higher. This is the average monthly salary, including housing, transport and other benefits. And as mentioned earlier, salaries vary drastically between different careers, and those working with international organizations will earn far higher than these estimates here. Cost of accommodation in Liberia. The rent and cost of buying a house in Liberia is hugely determined by its location. The monthly rental of a one-bedroom apartment in the city center can cost about $1,533.33, but for the same apartment in the suburbs, you will pay less to the amount of approximately $62.50 a month. Monthly rental of a three-room apartment in the center will set you back to $3,600, but the same three-bedroom apartment in the suburbs will give you about $308.33 a bill to pay. This simply goes to solidify the fact that a property's location influences its price to a great extent. Buying a house in Liberia also comes with such differences to a greater extent. Price per square meter to buy an apartment in the city center is largely expensive and sometimes a black market affair given the negotiations are often kept under wraps. The price per square meter to buy an apartment outside of the city center will cost about $6,824.32, and given the huge differences we saw with renting within the city center compared to the outskirts, we can have an idea of how expensive it is to buy a house in the city center. Cost of transport in Liberia. Transport costs are a key factor in determining market integration as it merges the various sectors to form a whole. Consequently, keeping transport costs low is critical to economic development, particularly for the common man situated in isolated rural communities. In Liberia in 2015, the price of gasoline, which is an imported commodity, was twice as high in isolated markets than in the capital. The preliminary findings of a recent study recognize 5 challenges, including truck, road maintenance, corruption on the road as key transport industry factors undermining the cost of transportation in the country. Taxi fares start depending on the distance, the waiting time as well as other factors which are usually discussed. The normal tariff is about $3.00, but normal taxi fares per 1 kilometer is between $0.25 and $0.62. Taking a taxi with a waiting period of 1 hour for normal tariff is between $10 to $15. Most experts and citizens choose to buy a car for transportation, and which leaves them to deal with the cost of a liter of gas. A liter of gasoline range between $1.02 to $1.32 depending on the season or location. Buying a car doesn't come cheap either, as a Volkswagen Golf 1.4 90 kilowatts treadline or an equivalent new car will set you back at an estimated $22,000. while a Toyota Corolla Sedan 1.6L 97 kilowatts comfort or an equivalent new car is about $23,000. Cost of healthcare in Liberia. Liberia is a low-income country with over 60% of its population living on less than $1 a day, and healthcare statistics reflect that the country's low level of development is really poor. In 2015, the World Health Organization reported the average life expectancy at around 60 years. The maternal mortality rate at 640 per 100,000 live births. And infant mortality rate was at 71 deaths per 1,000 live births. In Liberia, there is a pay-as-you-go system in the medical market, where patients, most of whom are uninsured, are required to pay cash prior to consultation, hospital admission and treatment. Many healthcare services are funded and supported by international and religious organizations, where individuals are only required to pay minimal admission fees. Expatriates and working Liberians who have insurance coverage are responsible for organizing reimbursement of medical services with their insurance providers. Expatriates and long-term visitors in Liberia must obtain an international health insurance policy to ensure access to healthcare services. Generally, healthcare in Liberia is of low quality and expensive, especially for the low-income earners who make up the majority of the population. Services offered by the missions and private hospitals are of higher quality and affordable, mostly to those within the higher income brackets. Cost of education in Liberia. Education in Liberia was severely affected by the First Liberian Civil War and Second Liberian Civil War. This was between 1989 and 2003. In 2010, the literacy rate of Liberia was estimated at 60.8%, but has improved over the years due to educational tools set in place by the government and international organizations. The Liberia Primary School Certificate Examination is coordinated in government-funded schools and many private schools by the West African Examinations Council. Those who opt for the government institutions are offered almost the education, while those who enroll for private schools pay huge sums ranging into the thousands of dollars, especially for international schools, and it is the same for secondary and high schools. But on a general basis, preschool or kindergarten for a full day stays in a private school is $70.83 and range between $41.67 to $100 per child every month. International primary schools charge a yearly tuition of $2,834 per child. The cost of tuition for a student going to the university ranges between $50 to $60 for government institutions, while private schools pay much higher. The cost of tuition for a bachelor's degree in Liberia is around $5,000 per year and can even go up to $7,500 for some institutions or courses. Hence, educational expenses are quite high in the good private and international institutions, which is why the locals mostly go for the cheaper government offers, even though it is agreed that it is not the best quality. Conclusion: many facilities are arguably not the best in Liberia to date because it is still recovering from a past filled with the marks of civil unrest and poor governance. The economy is not solid on its feet, hence wages are still dancing at a lower terminal. With a GDP per capita of just over $475 for Liberia, it is no surprise why the monthly and daily wages are quite low, especially for the nationals. These low wages, coupled with high cost of education, accommodation, utilities, healthcare, transportation, makes it a perfect recipe for a high cost of living for the people of Liberia. This is not necessarily the case with expats who earn much higher compared to the rest of the country, but then even with their high wages, with the prices of goods and services being high, it accounts for a high cost of living in Liberia. There you have it, explorers. That was the cost of living in Liberia. Thanks for watching this video, and if you did enjoy this video, do well to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.